Please be seated. In the song we sang before the Lord's Supper, I'd never heard it with that, the echo with the women's voices following, and that just whoever did that, I don't know who it was, but it was really nice. Thank you. Don't Look Back, or The Fox, the Funeral, and the Furrow. We'll get there in just a moment. Some more information, a more introduction to the idea of parables. For Bible class, we'll do leadership. For our worship services, we'll do parables. Let me tell you a story. If I were to say that, you would know that's introducing a certain form of speech. We have forms of speech in English, right? We have different ways of communicating, different ways of using words. Let me tell you a story. You know that's going to be different from a lecture on some technical, scientific thing. Biology, for example. That to me is pretty complicated. A lot of stuff about science is complicated. Very important, very necessary. But I don't think introduce the biology classes I've had, the teachers didn't introduce their subject by saying, let me tell you a story, and then go into little molecular things that you've got to discuss. Now, I did have a biology teacher that was also a preacher and a farmer, and he was my dad's and mom and dad's preacher at a small church in Tennessee. And I had biology class with his nephew. And every once in a while, his nephew would nudge me and say, ask him about the fishing trip. So I'd put my hand up and I'd say, Dr. Trull, tell us about the fishing trip. He'd say, I can't do that now, I can't do that, but well, let me just tell you a story. And then he'd tell us about it. Gave my hand a break from taking all those notes. I love Dr. Trull. Let me tell you a story. Okay, that's something on the order of Jesus told them a parable. Let me tell you a story as a long history. You think of Aesop fables, and animals figure prominently into the Aesop fables like cows, gnats, grasshoppers, other things. One of his fables is about a gnat that lands on the horns of a cow, and it just sits there for hours just doing whatever gnats say and saying whatever gnats say. And doing what gnats do, just looking so proud and bold and just speaking non-stop for hours. And when it's ready to go, it says to the cow, well, cow, I'm getting ready to go. I'll bet you're glad to see me leave after all the ruckus I've caused. And the cow said, I didn't even know you were there. And that's the end of the fable. And Aesop just leaves you hanging. Why did you tell that story? And you're supposed to scratch your head and wonder, well, is it about somebody that's really pretty small that's trying to make themselves look bigger than they really are? Is it somebody that has nothing to boast about? Boasting? Is it somebody that's a nuisance that needs to learn to be quiet? You see, you can draw all kinds of conclusions, all of them valid from that story. There's one about a grasshopper just out there singing beautifully, and grasshoppers are just invading my garden this year. I don't think they sing beautifully. Not this year. But someone comes up or some animal comes up and asks the grasshopper, where do you get such a beautiful, melodious voice? And the grasshopper says, I eat nothing but the dew, the morning dew. So the other animal says, I want a voice like yours. I will eat nothing but the beautiful morning dew. So it eats nothing but the dew, and in a few days that animal is dead. And Aesop's fable just ends right there. And you suppose, oh no, what do you do with this? What do you make out of this? That the morning dew is bad? No. But you better be sure what kind of leader you listen to, right? The grasshopper was not part of a very healthy community, was he? And he led his one follower into death. Right? So you better be careful of the leader you listen to, because a bad leader will get you killed. In 1945, 15 million people in Germany wished they'd listened to a different leader, because that's how many were dead at the end of 1945. See, Aesop's fables have a lot of truth, but they don't always explain the truth. You've got to get into the spirit of the story and listen to what it has to say. So why did Jesus speak in parables? Well, we know Jesus wanted you to understand the truth, right? Jesus wants us to know the truth so we can be saved, right? But what does Mark chapter 4 and verse 12 say? Will someone read that for us when you get there? That to me is one of the more stunning verses of the New Testament, especially about Jesus. Mark 4:12.
So that seeing they may see and not perceive, and hearing they may hear and not understand, lest they should turn and their sins be forgiven them.
So Jesus speaks in parables so that people won't understand. Isn't that what that says? Because if they understand, they're going to turn. I know I didn't do that right, but the turn in the military, I did it wrong, but I still turned. But they're going to turn and they'll be forgiven. And that's why I speak in parables. Now, what do you make out of that? Well, does Jesus want us to be lost? Absolutely not. Maybe what Jesus is saying there is, I want people to do the wrestling that it takes to really come to a knowledge of the truth and to come to know who I am. I want people that really have a heart for me, that follow me. Mark 4 and verse 12, that's a challenging verse to me. Why speak in parables? Why make it so difficult? There's a preacher-teacher named Fred Craddock who says that we often approach teaching the truth like blunt force trauma. He doesn't use that term, but we just beat people with the truth. You have a blunt object and you just hit them with it. I remember a woman telling me one time, she was a member of the church, her husband was not, he went to a different church, but she took a Bible and they disagreed over a subject and he hit him over the head with the Bible. Now, as I recall, it was a Dixon King James, and that is a very thick Bible. If you're going to get hit over the head with a Bible, let it be just a little thin New Testament. But she had a great big thick one, and she said proudly, I hit him over the head with the Bible. And I just kind of did like this. I was in my 20s. She was quite a bit older, so I had to be careful how I answered, but I just said, I'm not sure if that's the best way to always do it. Fred Craddock said, we've been hit with the truth so often that even blunt force trauma doesn't always get our attention. And what we need to learn how to do is communicate the truth, something like a bullet that very quickly gets inside, and once inside, like hollow point, explodes with meaning. And I wonder if that's not what Jesus wants the parables to do. Where we hear the story and we don't know what it means at first, but we think about it and we think about it and we think about it, and over time, it explodes with meaning inside. We may carry that bullet around with us for quite a while before we finally go, aha, I get that. Parables attract us. Later in the week, I'll do a quote where some of these points come from. But parables attract us because, let me tell you a story. I can say that, and some of you that were even taking notes, you were listening, I know, you're not sleeping, you were taking notes. But when I said, let me tell you a story, you raised your head up. Because we all want to hear a story. And it attracts, when Jesus would tell a parable, let me tell you a parable, they would look up. Number 2, parables force us to look for their meaning. They force us to think, what's being said? What does Jesus mean? What's the intent of what he's saying? If I just come right out and just tell you the statement, the truthful statement straight out, you might say, well, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I can see that, but I don't agree with it fully. But when I tell you a parable, or Jesus told a parable, they had to stop and think. Really listen. Okay? They're like, you've heard somebody say, don't tell certain people a joke on Saturday because they'll laugh in church on Sunday. It takes them that long to get it. Jesus actually meant that to happen sometimes. That you have to think about it later before you go, oh yeah. And number 3, the parables teach us to think. They teach us the thought process of the Savior and how to think and how to wrestle with issues and how to test things and come to an understanding. So parables actually exercise our spirit, they exercise our mind, and they're good for us. It can be difficult to understand parables, especially the extended ones. The extended parables may be like allegories. In an allegory, every character in the story represents something else or someone else. You take the prodigal son, or you take the parable of the sower, or the parable of the soil, some call it. There's enough characters in there. Every type of soil represents a certain person. Those are called allegories, where every point means something else. And the early preachers in the 200s and 300s loved preaching allegories. If you ever get a chance, you can look them up online. You don't have to buy the books anymore, they're online. But look up some of the sermons of like Gregory of Nicaea, or Origin and some of their sermons, you read them and say, how in the world do they get this? I wrote a paper on one of the ones who, the early Gregory of Nyssa, who wrote a sermon on the lost coin. And he went from the sermon of the lost coin to arguing from that parable with a deeper insight into what it means, arguing for the celibacy of preachers. Really, and that's what I did when I read that. And my comment in the paper was, this was not the method of preaching I was taught at Freed Hardeman. They certainly didn't teach that there, that preachers had to stay single. But that's what he got years ago, preaching allegories. Well, allegories illustrate a viewpoint in an artistic way with this story. Jesus could have just said, hey, watch out. Make sure your heart stays open only for healthy seed. And you might have said, yeah, that's true, and just walked on. But when he says the seed fell on rocky soil, or it fell on hard soil, or it fell on weedy soil, but some fell on good soil, now we've got to walk away thinking, did the seed fall in me? Or has it not fallen, I've just missed it? Well, maybe it did fall and I'm rocky. Maybe I'm hard-hearted. Maybe I'm shallow. Maybe I've got so many other concerns of the world in my life like weeds that there's no room for the seed of the gospel to grow. Am I really good soil? I may be terrible soil. Now, if he just said, make sure you're good soil, and walk off. But when he tells a story, you've got to wrestle with that. How many of us have wrestled with what that parable means over the last 30 or 40 years? Well, Jesus did what he wanted. He got us to think about it. And it may be a way to win over a skeptical audience. Parables can provide a new way to think and behave. If the prophet had gone to the king and said, you killed an innocent man, he might have gone, me? I would never do that. But when the preacher went to the king and he said, King, there's a poor man that had a lamb that his family loved. It was like a part of the family. And a rich man with lots of sheep kidnapped or stole his lamb and killed it to feed his guests. The king went, find that man. He should pay with his life. And Nathan said, thou art the man. And only then did David say, I have sinned. And he finally confessed what he did with Bathsheba and Uriah was wrong. And you see, by telling this story, it opened up the possibility for David to hear it. Because it got past his defenses, got inside like a hollow point bullet, and then exploded with meaning. And by then there was no way he could deny it. So parables have the potential to completely change the way we view life. So with that idea, let's look at Proverbs. Let's look at Luke chapter 9. Luke chapter 9, verses 57 through 62. Don't look back, or the fox, the funeral, and the furrow. Before we actually read that, verse 51. As the time approached for him to be taken up to heaven, Jesus resolutely set out for Jerusalem. This is called the travel narrative, or the travel journey, or a travel journal. What's happening is Jesus has been out ministering, and now chapter 9, verse 51, he sets out resolutely for Jerusalem. He is now beginning the journey to Jerusalem that'll take him to his death. That's 1941. Luke 1941 is where this journey actually ends. From now until nearly the end of the book, Jesus is on a journey. And God's people are always on the move. Think of the Exodus. Much of Jesus' ministry in the book of Luke is journey, traveling. And we're traveling through life, right? It's just kind of a neat way that Luke designs his book, designs his gospel that proclaims who Jesus is. So they start out resolutely set out. That means Jesus went to Jerusalem with a fierce determination. He has set his course. Why does he have to be so determined about it? Why does he have to be so resolute? Because he knows that the end of his journey is a cross. I looked forward coming to Yellowstone Bible Camp because I knew that when I got here, there would be a welcoming group of people. There would be delicious food. There would be wonderful scenery. Would I have been excited to get here if I knew when I got here some wicked people were going to strip me, beat me, and nail me to a cross? I might have taken a wrong turn in Wyoming on purpose. And I would not have asked directions because I wouldn't have wanted to know where I was going. Anywhere but here. There's a reason why Jesus had to set his face resolutely and say, I know it's ahead of me, but I am going to go. Resolutely. And he sent messengers on ahead who went into a Samaritan village to get things ready for him, but the people there did not welcome him because he was heading for Jerusalem. When the disciples, James and John, saw this, they said, Lord, do you want us to call down fire from heaven to destroy them? I wish they would have interpreted this or translated it, burn them up, or what's our phrase today? Light them up. Boy, let's show them who's Lord. But Jesus turned and rebuked his disciples. He rebuked his disciples. There was a time, if you go back to 2 Kings 1, 10 through 12, when the people or the king or the leader was not responsive to God, he sent down fire and burned them up. And the disciples know this story. So when they meet somebody that's a bit hard-hearted, a community that's not responsive to Jesus, that's hard-hearted, let's do what they did in the Old Testament. Jesus, let's call down some fire and let's burn them up. And Jesus says, you know, there was a time God did that and it was appropriate. There was a place for that. But now we want grace to shine forth. So he rebukes his disciples and he goes to another village. This is the setup. After Luke sets up the travel narrative, we're going to Jerusalem. We're going to do business differently than our ancestor did. God is still in charge. He's still bringing forth his kingdom. But we're not burning people up yet. We're not burning people up right now. We are trying to turn their heart toward home. We want to shoot them with a bullet that explodes with meaning. We do not want blunt force trauma that leaves them dead. Now he starts his journey. There's 3 prospective followers. He starts his journey and right away he encounters 3 people that potentially will follow him on this journey, but they're not quite ready for the journey. And I think what this is supposed to do is set us up to ask, are we really aware of what this journey with Jesus is about? Are we prepared to make this journey? The first person encountered is verse 57 and 58. As they're walking along the road, a man said to him, I will follow you wherever you go. And Jesus replied, foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. Okay, so what is he telling this guy? Well, foxes and birds are animals that also represent political entities and even political enemies. What does Jesus say one time about Herod? That fox, right? Jesus may be making an allusion here to this man that wants to follow Jesus because he has a following. He's going toward Jerusalem. That is the seat of power. Maybe I can get on board, and whatever Jesus does of a great nature, I can become a part of that. And Jesus says, let me tell you, those who seek political power, okay, that's not going to work on the screen. Those who seek political power, like foxes and birds, like Herod, they have places. They have a place where they belong on this earth, but I don't. I don't have a place to lay my head. I don't have a place to call home. My entire life is a journey. The travel narrative of Luke 9:51 to 19:41 is a metaphor for all of Jesus' life and purpose. He is simply traveling through here to make us aware of the road to heaven, so we'll follow him there. And now it becomes for us a journey as well. Is this world really our home? Or do we see ourselves as merely passing through? Well, verses 59 through 60. Jesus says to a second potential follower, follow me. And the man replied, Lord, first let me go bury my father. And Jesus said to him, let the dead bury their own dead, but you go and proclaim the kingdom of God. Let me go bury my father. My son Wes is here, and he likes to play basketball. And those of you who are going to play basketball this afternoon, if you say, hey, Wes, you want to go play basketball with us? I would be very surprised if Wes said, I would love to, but first let me go bury my father. But that's the picture here, because this man's father very likely is not dead. Because if this man's father, this prospective follower, if his father was dead, where would that man be? He'd be with the family, taking care of the burial of the father. The father's not dead. The father is likely very much alive. What this man is doing is finding an appropriate way to make an excuse to not follow Jesus. And really, it may not even be an excuse. In his mind, it may be a very good reason, because the phrase, bury my father, is a phrase that shows loyalty to family and to parents. Jesus, how can I follow you on this great adventure when I owe loyalty to my parents right here? If someone in the Middle East speaks of moving, someone might say to them, aren't you going to go bury your father first? Meaning, aren't you going to go take care of business at home? Aren't you going to go clear this with your parents? Aren't you going to go get their blessing? There are community expectations. We have them here, perhaps not as strong. When I got married, my parents lived in Tennessee. I lived in Tennessee. All my siblings were. Married Cheryl, we went to Florida. And from Florida, we went to Wyoming. My other siblings scattered. And my dad told me one time that sometimes my mother, my kid's grandmother, will look at the pictures on the wall and just kind of cry because they live so far away and she wants to see them. I said, oh, Dad, I'm sorry. He said, don't apologize, because you didn't ask to come into this world. All your mother and I want of you, no matter where you live your life, we want you to live a good life. And that included being a Christian, living the Christian life. We don't care where you lead it, just that you do. Well, now my kids grow up, and what do? They all moved to Tennessee, Virginia, and Georgia. Half a world away, it seems like. And we wish they were closer. But guess what we wish the most? That they lead a good life, no matter where they lead that life. So we still have community expectations, but it's not necessarily community expectations that they live it in our backyard, in the same town, even in the same state. The community expectations are live a certain quality of life. It may not be where you live it, but it's how you live it. Their community included how you live it, but also where you live it. Those small farming communities, their kids tended to stay close, at least the boys. The girl would marry into her husband's family and become a part of that family unit. Her children then stayed close there. But those are some of the communities. So when they said, let me go bury my father, he is showing honor and loyalty to his family by going and considering their concerns, their interests. Can I get my father's blessing to go do this? If not, maybe I shouldn't. So what Jesus now is saying, let the dead bury their own dead, is I am forming a new community, and it is a competing community. The community that I am forming will now compete with that of your mother and your father and your cousins and your aunt and uncle, because they may choose to not follow Christ. They may choose to go a different way. I call you to follow me in a new community called the church. That's a challenge. You see, if he'd have just told that guy, hey, follow me or you're done. I'm done. Walk off. But when he says, let the dead bury the dead. Now this young man has to stop and ask, am I dead? Am I dead spiritually? Am I dead to Jesus? Then what does that mean? Am I placing the concern of my physical family above that of my spiritual life? If I turn Jesus down, what's the chance that I'll ever have a chance to win my mother and father to this new spiritual life? I may be doing a disservice to my father by not following Jesus, even if he disapproves. Boy, you see what goes on in this guy's head? Boy, he's got to wonder. There's a Middle Eastern phrase that says, you want to bury me? And a father says that to his son, to his rebellious son. Like if the son sneaks out of the house and takes the family car without permission. Or the son moves to another community and gets a job outside of this community a job the Father doesn't approve of. Son, do you want to bury me? And what he means is, do you want to be out from my authority? Do you want to get away from the influence of this family? Do you want to turn your back on me? And Jesus is coming along and saying, I am the only authority that matters eternally. And the third, prospective follower. Verses 61 and 62. Another said, I will follow you, Lord, but first let me go back and say goodbye to my family. And Jesus replied, no one who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is fit for service in the kingdom of God. A better translation than let me go say goodbye to my family is let me take leave of my family. And there's a bunch of verses in the New Testament where the same phrase, say goodbye, is translated, let me take leave of. Because to say goodbye simply means goodbye. But to take leave of means you go back and you take care of certain details that are necessary for you to make your exit. So take leave of would be better. And what it really means is let me go home and get permission. Here again is this idea of the community standard and the connectedness to the community. Let me go home and get permission. And a yes answer would be go in peace or God be with you. So Jesus says, come follow me. And the man says, I want to. I really do. But let me go home and speak to my family first. Let me go take leave. And if my Father says to me, go in peace, son, or God be with you, then Jesus, I'll follow you. What if the Father doesn't say go in peace? There's an old Syriac version of this verse that says, let me explain my case to those at my house. That's how they translated this. When Jesus says, or recalls, and the other says, I will follow you, Lord, but first let me go back and say goodbye to my family. In the old Syriac version, they translate that, let me first explain my case to those at my house. So they understand what I'm doing and see if they approve. A grown son in another city may go home to get approval of his parents to change jobs. There's still that community, there's still that connectedness. The third prospective follower says, Jesus, I want to follow you, but I need to get my parents' approval. And then Jesus talks about the plow. In the ancient plowing system, there were actually very possibly 4 times that the farmer would plow the same piece of ground to break it up, to prepare it for, a trench for water, to plant the seed, to cover the seed, later for drainage if there's too much water. So there's 4 times you may actually plow the same piece of ground for the same crop. And what they would do is they're holding the plow, and they may actually hold it with one hand while they have a prod to prod the cow with the other if it starts to get slow. And you would actually look between the hindquarters of the animal to see if he's staying true to the line that's been cut before. And you know what happens if you're doing this and you look back? How many of you have done that driving a car? This may not work here. But a teacher was telling the story about Lot's wife looking back and turning into a pillar of salt, and the little boy says, that's nothing. One of my parents looked back and turned into a telephone pole. Okay? I like those jokes, you may not. But when you look, you often turn, right? You turn. Okay? If this guy is plowing and he looks back, he turns and he destroys other rows that he's already plowed. See, he could tear up seed and plant. So you don't want to do that. So you keep looking ahead. If you look back, you mess up. The imagery of the plow comes right after this discussion of loyalty to the family or loyalty to the kingdom. The Talmud says a father and his son or a master and his disciple are regarded as one individual. When I talked before about how a priest or a rabbi would train his son, that's the master and the disciple. The disciple becomes one with the master. The son becomes one with the father. In this community, if he's a farmer, the son becomes a farmer. If he's a leather worker, the son becomes a leather worker, right? You become one. You're like one. You're indistinguishable. And Jesus is saying that's how it is with us. A lifelong relationship develops between the mentor and the mentoree. And Jesus is inviting these people to a lifelong mentoring relationship. And they've got to make a decision. Am I going to keep my hand to the plow, going forward with Jesus, or will I look back and mess up? These are tough verses. You see, these are not blunt force trauma verses, although They sure can be as well. But what they're designed to be are verses that send out a little bullet that pierces, gets inside, and may sit a while, but eventually goes poof, and explodes with meaning. And Jesus wants this to explode with meaning. And here's the challenge of this passage of these three prospective followers who are confronted by Jesus with truth told in the form of a parable. Here's how Fred Craddock sums this up. Jesus never said to choose him over the devil, but to choose him over the family. Most sensible people are not going to see anything attractive in the devil and say, oh, I want that. There are perverted people who worship the devil. There are. But most healthy people are not going to say, oh, I love the prospect of burning forever. Most of us are going to reel back in horror at the prospect of being in the presence of the devil. Jesus doesn't have to do 3 parables in a row to challenge us to not follow the devil. He has to give us 3 parables in a row. Boom, boom, boom. Right in a row. To challenge us to not give up Jesus because we have chosen family over him. One of the best things we can do for our family is to follow the eternal truth of Jesus. And even if our family rejects us in the short term for that, as they see the change in our lives over time, it may well be that the family that gave us a hard time for following Jesus is the family that later thanks us for pointing the way to them. But until that moment when the family understands the decision we made to follow Jesus, we still have to answer this question and deal with this statement. Jesus never said to choose him over the devil, but to choose him over the family. Is there someone or something in your life that's preventing you from saying, Jesus will be my Lord, and I will travel this road with him, no matter where it leads, in this life, because I know where it ends up in the next? What is preventing you from following? And if the challenge of these parables cuts to your heart and you're ready to say, I believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, confess him and be baptized in his name, then please come to the front as we stand and sing.